Walking through the woods on a summer day can be peaceful and relaxing, taking in the sounds, the smells, and being one with nature. Digging your toes into the sand on a sunny day at the beach, it's an instant de-stressor. But could time spent in nature be good for our physical health as well as our mental health? What exactly happens when we touch the earth? How does our body interact with this natural energy? The fast-paced modern world we live in often leaves us feeling disconnected and overwhelmed. As we hustle through our daily lives, we rarely take the time to pause, breathe, and connect, literally, with the very source that sustains us, the earth itself. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie, and you are listening to Off the Radar, a production of the National Weather Desk. On the show, we dig deep into topics about weather, climate, the oceans, space, nature, and so much more. Our goal is to help you better understand the weather and to love it as much as we do. Grounding, sometimes called earthing, has taken over social media.
This, connecting with nature, this is how we heal and thrive.
To thoroughly ground your electrical system in the body, you want to ground for hours per day.
Grounding is a simple yet powerful practice that involves physically connecting with the Earth's energy.
So there's definitely something to be said about being barefoot and grounding, but then also touching a tree. It increases conductivity, so you're going to be experiencing more of Earth's electromagnetic energy.
The connection has been cherished by ancient civilizations for millennia, but in recent times it's been forgotten or overlooked in our quest for technological advancement. But recently it started gaining momentum again, and for good reason. A medical article in 2019 states that earthing, also known as grounding, refers to the discovery that the bodily contact with Earth's natural electric charge stabilizes the physiology at the deepest levels, reduces inflammation, pain, stress, improves blood flow, energy, and sleep, and generates greater well-being. Such effects are profound, systemic, and foundational, and often develop rapidly. In this episode, we'll explore the science behind grounding and the effect it's taking on our body and minds. The National Weather Desk producer Ryan Berlin has recently been experimenting with grounding and brought this topic to my attention. Now, at first I was a little skeptical, but the more I looked into it online, the more interested I became. And because grounding has proved controversial on social media, Ryan and I decided to speak with Dr. Laura Koniver, also known as the intuition physician, to dig deeper into the issue. Dr. Koniver received her medical degree from Jefferson College and started a career in traditional medicine over 2 decades ago. Now, her career pivoted to a more holistic approach after her own personal experience with grounding.
So with my daughter with colic, she was crying and crying. But if I was outside on the earth, touching the ground with bare feet, because I lived in Arizona at the time, she wouldn't be crying. And so that's kind of, it spiraled from there, realizing that, wow, I don't have to medicate her necessarily. I could just boost her wellness. And
Laura knows everything there is to know about this topic and has spent her career researching it. She told us how it works, why it works, and the medical studies that support this. So head outside, take off your shoes, and relax while we explore the healing world of grounding. Dr. Laura Koniver, thank you so much for joining us. We want your expertise on this topic that apparently is gaining a lot of momentum right now. So we're very excited to talk to you. You are the expert on this. Bringing in another one of our National Weather Desk producers. We've recently had Matt Ritter on the show. Brian Berlin is with us today, and he was interested in this topic as well. He produces our show, our broadcast from the Washington, D.C. area, so familiar with weather. And then I am bringing in my meteorology expertise, of course, into this as well. So we're tying it all together, but we're thrilled to have you on the show. And want to get a little background on you, first of all, and a little bit on your story and how you wound up in this different realm of medicine, perhaps.
well, I was totally conventional all the way, conventional medical school and internship, and started practicing. And then I became a mom, and I realized conventional medicine just totally failed me as a mom because, my daughter was in pain. She had colic. She cried, and she was like 2 weeks old, and I took her into the pediatrician, conventional all the way. And they wanted to put her on all these prescriptions, like antacids and things to help her with pain. And I'm like, she's 2 weeks old. What? I don't know. From then on, I just started thinking, no, I'm not going to medicate my daughter from crying. I don't know. Just the whole thing started seeming ridiculous. And then after being a mom, I went in to see a patient. I think I was doing just a general wellness exam on a young woman who needed birth control. And in the past, that would have been nothing to me. But at this time, it just felt weird to crank her through in 10 minutes and give her a prescription and not know anything about her. And it started making me feel kind of nauseous. And I just realized I didn't want to practice in a very conventional way. So I started becoming more open to holistic therapies and things that put power in the patient's hand. And realizing that medicine is great for emergencies, like my appendix ruptured. Thank God I could have surgery to take it out, but that's not really creating wellness. So the standard medical model is to fire hose and put out problems, but I never learned in medical school or, my training or in my practice how to maintain wellness. And that's where grounding came in. So with my daughter with colic, she was crying and crying. But if I was outside on the earth, touching the ground with bare feet, because I lived in Arizona at the time, she wouldn't be crying. And so that's kind of, it spiraled from there, realizing that, wow, I don't have to medicate her necessarily. I could just boost her wellness and her comfort. And that's where it started about. And now she's turning 22. So
can you give a little background on what grounding actually is for those who have never heard this term before and what the benefits are?
Sure. I mean, it's a huge topic, but just to put it simply, again, the earth has this electrical heartbeat, that DC energy. And so it's constantly pulsating out with that. And then our body runs on DC energy just to maintain wellness. We've done tons of medical studies now showing when someone is connected to the earth's energy and when they're not. And there's a synchronization, and it actually puts our body in a healing state. And it instantaneously relaxes our muscles. And I don't mean just like we feel relaxed. I mean, looking at an EMG, muscle tension on a study, sham grounded versus grounded, the actual muscle tension drops instantly. Your brainwave patterns within a millisecond shift into a more healthy, less stressed out pattern. So getting into the alpha brainwaves, and anything that's electrical, your heart rate variability within a couple seconds starts to get boosted. So it's a very immediate response when you are synced up and regulated by the natural energy of the earth, as opposed to being totally disconnected and self-regulating. And obviously we can be healthy, even disconnected, because that's how we're alive right now. I don't think any of us are probably grounded right at this moment. But there is a price to pay for how long you go between syncing your body up with the natural regulator, which is the earth outside. And so medical studies have quickly shown a difference. But then if you ground for hours, if you ground nightly, if you ground every day, if you ground for long periods of time, weeks, months, and years, there's additional benefits. So the immediate benefits are your muscles, your brain, and your heart. But over a long period of time, you can start regulating and balancing your hormones, your cortisol drops. Your sleep is better and more restorative. There's a lot of long-term benefits that it protects your bone density, that kind of thing. So there's immediate benefits and then long-term benefits.
Have you seen any extreme benefits, just anecdotal stories from your patients where you were even surprised?
Yes. I mean, originally I was surprised anecdotally that my daughter stopped crying. But then, yes, I've been working with that for 20 years now with patients saying, I don't think we can ignore this missing piece of conductive medicine is what I like to call it. Because again, we know the whole body is electrical and we use it to diagnose problems like looking at an EKG, looking at your EEG of your brain, looking at other electrical parameters. But we haven't started in conventional medicine using it as a way to actually boost wellness. But I have been doing that anecdotally with patients for decades now. And yes, oh my gosh, I ran a weight loss study looking at does being connected to the earth outside for 15 minutes a day boost your metabolism and help with weight loss. And as a side, I just saw so many people in that study I was running. I had one woman who was scheduled for surgery. We just did this study for 6 weeks and she only did 15 minutes a day outside. And she canceled her surgery. She was going to have carpal tunnel surgery on both wrists because she had so much pain and she needed to use it for her occupation. So she actually was scheduled to go under the knife. And for doing grounding just 15 minutes a day, after 6 weeks, she canceled it and didn't even need to do the operation because she had no pain and inflammation in her wrists and she was able to work with pain-free. So yeah, dramatic studies and dramatic results in just short periods of time.
Inflammation is everyone's talking inflammation now. It seems social media like foods to help inflammation. And a lot of people say, grounding can help with inflammation. I think a lot of people don't know what that is. If you could explain when you say grounding helps reduce inflammation, what that means, because it's not like inflammation, right? Like from a bug bite, that's not exactly what that means, right?
It is. It's just internal, but your body's getting irritated. They substitute the word irritated. You're irritated. And so the lining of your, you get like more likely to have a heart attack because the lining of your arteries will get inflammation, but just consider it like irritated. So they get sticky and it has the swelling and the, the breakdown of the healthy tissues, and the same with your gut lining and breakdown of the mucosa. And so things that shouldn't be getting in, like in your gut, leaky gut develops, or in your arteries, you start getting plaques there, and then you're set up for getting strokes and heart attacks because of the areas of inflammation. But you could substitute other words, but it is basically like what you see on your skin when it breaks down and you have an ulcer or a bug bite or, inflammation there. Yeah, similar.
Do you ever have a hard time talking people into this?
Well, no, because I refuse to, because if you're not open to it, then you're going to discount it, or you're going to be like, oh, well, because I started exercising, you're going to make the benefits be about something else. So I would never, ever in someone. But I think that is where I come in, because a lot of people are open to grounding, which is great, but you have to be open to it. Whereas I am a conventionally trained physician. And so people who are kind of interested, but a little bit hesitant, can actually go to my website and read medical studies and realize it's not just something made up. It's something that not only is it natural, but it has also been conventionally medically studied.
So how do you do it? If somebody wants to try this, what's the best way to start? And are there different ways to do it?
Yes. I would definitely recommend go outside, and as opposed to using a grounding tool at first. But then if you notice that you feel benefits and you want to do it for longer, most people can't be outside for hours. So you can multitask and ground indoors while you're watching TV or sleeping or whatever. So if you want to do a long period of time, then that's where grounding tools come in. But first things first is just to go outside and see if you feel better. And your whole body is conductive. So a lot of times people are like, go outside and go barefoot. But a lot of times you don't want to go barefoot. You live in a city, or there's fire ants, or it's hot. The pavement's going to burn your feet. So, and you don't have your own yard. You don't want to necessarily be barefoot. So it's really our whole body that's conductive. So one fingertip touching a leaf on a tree will ground you. The same as if you're laying at the beach. So you don't have to be, laying or swimming in the ocean. You could literally be on your lunch break and just touch the leaf on a bush in a city environment where it's outside, and it's as long as it's rooted in the ground, everything living is DC energy, and so those plants are also grounding you. And actually, there's a lot of surfaces outside that allow the energy through. They're semi-conductive, so cement, so sidewalks are all grounded. Cement is all grounded. Anything
interesting.
metal,
I didn't know that. So you could walk on the sidewalk, and that will give you the same benefit as if you walked in a grass
1,000%,
field.
absolutely. So if you think people think you're weird, or it's not safe to take off your shoes, you can just sit. And I do this a lot in an urban setting. You just sit on cement steps outside, and if you can just have your hand resting there, you can be weeding through your emails or eating your lunch or whatever, and you're grounded the whole time, and no one knows what you're doing.
And is it the same? Is 15 minutes the same, or do you need to okay, if you're going to do 15 minutes on grass, to translate that, you need to do about a half hour on concrete, or is it the same exact?
No, all conductive outdoor surfaces are
interesting.
The difference between your conductivity on each of these surfaces would be you would be talking about the speed of light, 0.000 milliseconds difference between the conductivity of something semi-conductive and conductive. That's how powerful grounding is. So if you have a ground test meter and you touch a cement sidewalk, or you touch a signpost that's metal that's grounded in the earth, or you're on the dirt, or you're on grass, it's immediately on all of those going to register as grounded, your whole body. And even if you're grounding through your foot, your face is instantly grounded. I mean, your body is so conductive. Every cell is conductive. So it's like turning on a light like that.
But you have to touch it with your bare skin.
I say bare skin because that way we know, but actually you can ground but it's just okay. So plastic is what has really started insulating us from the earth. And most of our fabrics now have polyester or some kind of synthetic in it. So it is possible, especially if you're wet, if you're sweating, or if your socks get wet from the sweat of your feet or whatever, or if you're in a downpour outside, you probably are grounded through clothes because the water will conduct through. But I always just say, so and there's no guesswork, and you don't have to actually test it, just directly touch with your skin. But again,
there's are there special shoes you can walk in?
There's so many things. Yes, there's grounded shoes. There's grounded shoe stickers that you can just stick a sticker under the sole of your shoe, put it on, and the sticker will go inside to where your foot is. Again, grounding through hands. There's conductive gloves. There's conductive socks. There's conductive. I have a conductive walking cane that's a metal cane, so you can use a hiking stick. I mean, there's just so many.
You can do this for free.
You should be doing it for free. You should be doing it outside every single day, even if it's just a few minutes.
A lot of people who promote grounding, and they sort of say that a lot of it's not more mainstream because it sort of challenges mainstream narratives about medicine. And one of the big things we hear about that is pharmacology and the amount of money that is made there. At a certain point, do you think there's going to be this thing where someone's going to say, hey, you're doing the same thing, right? So we hear about grounding, and a lot of times now you'll see people who promote grounding. They say, this is a great thing. It's alternative. Don't, the mainstream narrative is all about money. But then at the same time, we're seeing grounding mats, sheets, socks, all of that. Do you think at a certain point that could sort of say, well, this is kind of the exact same thing?
Oh, yeah. It's already at that point. It's already there. Yeah. The grounding industry, not me as a healthcare provider, because I very much think people should go outside. And I very much resisted grounding tools for a long time until I realized that that's harming patients with mobility issues, patients recovering from things. So there has to be some indoor access. And honestly, you get grounded indoors just when you wash your hands or you take a shower because of the water coming in. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get grounded. Your basement of your home, since cement. I mean, I ground out in my garage all the time just because it's a slab and I know I'm grounded just standing in the garage. So even when it's cold out, I have a shelter and I have a heater out there. So there's lots of ways to get grounded, for free in your own home and in your own environment. But yeah, it's already been super monetized. It's a huge industry. And there's a lot of people that don't have healthcare. In fact, I don't honestly know of a grounding company that is led by someone in healthcare. It's very much a business. And I very much agree with you.
Would you say about the early 2000s, maybe 20 years ago, is when people really started to explore this more seriously as a way to medically. And so obviously there were small studies, but now we're seeing studies, which to me is a little nerve-wracking, that are sponsored by these companies. So very much like
studies, yes.
Yeah, so very much what we've seen mainstream, you'll say, oh, here's a great grounding study, but if you go and look at who's sponsoring that study, it's a company that's selling mats or sheets or something 100%. Like that.
And it's very dangerous, and there's a dangerous spinoff because, again, when it's not regulated by healthcare providers, there are grounding companies who, like you said, fund, just like a pharmacy or a pharmaceutical company would fund a study, showing that they're grounding tool, and then they promote misinformation. So now there's becoming misinformation about how it's safe to ground even around EMFs and that kind of thing, because they really want you to buy their indoor grounding tool, but they know you're using it at your computer. And so, yes, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, but 1,000% I could go down that road of there are actually boundaries. It doesn't make you magically protected from EMFs because you're conductive. So yes, do I think that people who conduct their own studies to sell their own product is something that you should necessarily hang your hat on? No, absolutely not.
And one more, and I know we got to get back to the weather portion, Emily, but social media is obviously huge in a lot of ways. And I think it's one of the things that's really pushing grounding, earthing, the movement, whatever. But it's getting tied to a lot of people who challenge other sort of narratives that are becoming controversial. So like Paul Saladino, if you guys don't know him, check him out. He's a big carnivore advocate of the carnivore diet. Liver King, I don't know if people have heard of him, check him out. They're really controversial in a lot of their other areas. And do you feel that that's starting to make grounding more controversial than it actually should be?
Yes, grounding is lumped in now with everything holistic. Looking directly at the sun, which I know does cause cataracts, so I'm not 100% a fan, but people will assume, and there's a lot of lumping in of holistic modalities and some of them. But then on the flip side, because I am holistic and very open to holistic modalities, I've been incredibly criticized by the government and by the Federal Trade Committee, and I have gotten warnings, and literally just for promoting vitamin D or vitamin C, had part of my website shut down. So I'm right in the middle, and I get both. I get very much criticized and over-regulated for things that are kind of common sense. Like, I'm so sorry, but if you think we were born to be insulated from the earth, that's not common sense. So I don't see who could be suspicious of grounding. I interviewed multiple astronauts who stood on the moon and looked at our Earth and said, it's the most beautiful thing. And you look at the Earth and it's the only vibrant color in all of space. And you really get the feeling that the business of this planet is to promote life and to provide life. As we know it, that's what we know in our tiny little slice of our little solar system, is that our Earth's business is to support life. I don't mean business profitably, but that's the Earth supports life. So to think like an astronaut looking at that, and he said, every cell in my body wants to go back and kiss the ground, go back there and be on that Earth, because every cell in my body evolved with that Schumann resonance and that Earth's frequency. To be that far from it is a scary thing. And I want to go back to it. And it's just a yearning. And so to be suspicious of that and say that, is so woo-woo, I don't think so. I think it makes absolute intuitive common sense. But then it does become lumped into people who think grounding is just meditating or, chakra work or other, and I'm not against any of that work, but I think it is very conventional. We know in medicine that our entire body functions electrically. That's why cardiologists rely on an EKG and neurologists rely on an EEG. And we know that our body has to function electrically. So I don't understand why it's lumped on one side or the other. To me, it's conductive medicine. It needs to grow, and it needs to not be suspicious, but it also needs to not be monetized, like you said. So yeah, it's a rough industry right now because it's it's just right in the middle, and it's getting backlash from both sides.
Yeah, it's sort of hard because it's getting pushed out there, which is great. But again, a lot of the people pushing it are also tied to these other things that are a bit more controversial, it seems.
It's funny you mentioned vitamin D, because I feel like years ago, if somebody had mentioned like a vitamin D supplement, it maybe wasn't as accepted. And now I feel like every doctor is saying vitamin D.
Yeah, 100%. And for good reason. It literally helps you sleep at night. There's so many things.
I want to go back to this current and ask you about like surface area. So you said touch a leaf. Does it make a difference if you're laying on a beach or if you touch a leaf? Are you getting the same benefit?
Same benefits. And that is because that is how conductive our bodies are. And that is how we were meant to function and be in a state of health, is that our body is so conductive that one cell, if I could go down to one cell on my fingertip and touch something conductive outside on the earth, my entire body, like turning a light switch on, is grounded from head to toe. It's not something like, that's why it's a great healing modality, because if I take an Advil and I have to wait for my digestive tract to dissolve it, and then I have to wait for my circulatory system to distribute it to feel benefits, that's not what grounding is like. Grounding is conductive. It's electrical. So it is literally like turning a light switch on. So if you have an area that's scarred or has poor conductivity, that's why it's so good for wound healing. Things that are an obstacle for your body to get blood flow or oxygen or a medication to is not an obstacle for grounding. That's why it's a fascinating thing. And there actually isn't any benefit, although there are other benefits, ions and, vitamin D from the sun and plant pheromones and microbiome. There's so many additional benefits, but just just for conductive health, it's not more beneficial to be floating in the ocean than to just have one fingertip on a metal railing outside, because your whole body responds is a difference of like 0.000 milliseconds difference. If I lay in the earth, I'll get just the tiniest fraction of a second quicker because it's my whole body area as opposed to a fingertip. But it's in the realm of healthcare and how your body goes into a healing response, completely negligible.
Okay, so what about if it's being transferred that quickly in all these different ways? What about from being to being? Like if my kids are running around outside, can I go snuggle my kids and get the benefit?
Yes. You're so smart to pick up on that, because 1,000%. I hate the cold. So if I'm, with my partner holding his hand and he's touching a leaf, or like a kid, my kids don't care. When they were little, they'd be barefoot, whereas I wouldn't be. Or even for me, what I love is through a pet or through an animal. When my dog is outside on the earth, that dog is grounded. So as long as it's not super thick fur, it won't go through hair, because it's insulatory, just similar to like clothing. But if I'm like petting her ears or her snout or her belly where the fur is, you can be grounded through your pet. Yes, you can be grounded.
How long do they hold on to that current? Like if the dog comes inside and is inside for a while?
Just as instant as it is on, it's instant off. The minute you move from the earth, you're not grounded. But I have done studies where we have literally linked hands, and you could be 80 people long and the 80th person down there is grounded just from one person touching. And the same with plants. So I have a balcony at my house, and if I'm upstairs and I don't feel like going downstairs and I don't feel like stepping on my fire ant mounds that I can't get rid of, on my balcony, I touch a leaf on a tree and I'm grounded. So I can be having my morning coffee grounded, and I'm not even on the earth, but that's how conductive even plants are. You could go to the tallest tree, as long as it's rooted in the ground, and touch the top leaf, and you're grounded as if you're laying on the beach.
So there's a medical benefit to petting my dog outside.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Do it. All right. Let's talk about location, weather, drawbacks, dangers. Talk about the earth and anything we should be concerned about if we're trying this or worried about.
Is there anything to suggest different weather is better for grounding?
Not yet. I wish.
Is it worth it to study that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But like you said, with studies, the whole thing is who's going to fund it? It's going to be either a grounding company that wants to sell a product, or I don't know who would fund that. So, but yeah, there definitely should be. What we do know about the earth, which I'm sure you as the meteorologist knows more than I do, is that the earth puts out multiple different DC electrical fields, including the Carnegie curve. So this needs to be studied, but the Carnegie curve has a daily oscillation that peaks around 7 p.m. and is low around 3 a.m. And we don't know yet if it matters during the day, because we just know we're grounded the whole time. And the Carnegie curve also is elliptical, so it kind of informs us what season we're in. because it peaks in fall and spring and is lower in summer and winter. Do we know what effect that has on our human health? Not yet. We know it's all positive, but we don't know if we can optimize it. We just don't know that yet. So I would say, so two things to mention as far as like quote unquote dangers. They're not dangers. It's your body is optimizing. But since we have over medicated our society, when we have people and they might need it, they might need to be on blood thinners, but grounding really boosts your circulation, which is great. But if you're artificially thinning your blood and then you have a cut, you will bleed more. So if you're a bleed risk, you might want to talk to your physician about coming down on your blood thinners or just have them monitor you while if you're starting a lot of grounding. And the same thing with thyroid. Again, we know that grounding boosts your metabolism and it does boost thyroid hormone. So if you're artificially on thyroid supplements, it's possible that you can go down on them. So it's not necessarily a danger, but it's something that in some situations, because your body is becoming healthier, you might need to go down on some of your medications. And the other thing that may or may not be worth mentioning, because it's a big topic, is if you're indoor grounding, trying not to be in an electrical field, because then you're introducing that AC current, which although your body is still in a grounded healing state and all the medical studies, people were in electrical fields. So like babies in a NICU, there's studies about babies in incubators. Well, they're in an electrical field because they have, their body temperature is being regulated and they have, EKGs and their little incubators got a million different electrical things and they go into a healing state. So it's not that it's dangerous to do it around EMFs, but if you're electrosensitive, you might feel that current. So that might come through as uncomfortable feelings. So in that case, then we want to make sure we're not in electrical fields when we're grounded.
Can you overdo it? Can you ground too much?
Not that we know of, because there's people, I feel like obviously before we invented plastics and tires and stuff like that, we were grounded 24/7. So I can't imagine that it would be harmful to the human body, but I don't know.
And what do you say to people who say, well, look, of course you feel better. You're outside, it's sunny, you're nice, you're probably taking a walk, you're enjoying yourself, you're not worried about work, you're relaxing. So yeah, you're going to feel better than that. Who knows if it's whether you're touching the ground or not?
Well, we do know because we have all those medical studies where we take all that away and we're indoors and we have a sham ground and a real ground. And then we see those physiologic responses. So we do know, but I would also agree with them. I wouldn't poo-poo that. Of course, there's additional benefits. There's medical studies that show just seeing a tree through a window makes people get out of the ICU faster and utilize less pain medication. So that's how much we want to be outside. Like our body needs to see a greenery. And so there are a lot of other benefits, like we hinted on vitamin D already. So I would say, yes, you're right, all those things. And we also know grounding provides something else.
Do you think that there's been a shift in like the medical field over the past couple of decades to become more holistic, more functional?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I think in general, because first of all, now we're accruing studies on it. So it is more seen as more legitimate, which is reasonable. And also because I think conventional medicine is starting to fail us. The longer we've been disconnected from the earth, the more decades that go by, and the more we're seeing chronic illness rise. And so that is a correlation that people are becoming aware of. And then thirdly, I honestly think the pandemic has been somewhat helpful because during those conditions, people couldn't go necessarily to their routine medical care, or they couldn't have access. And there's a lot of problems. I think as health insurance gets more ridiculous and there's more barriers to access to medical care, people are starting to realize like, oh, I'm only going to use that if it's an emergency. Like I get in a car accident, I want to go to the ER. Of course. Or I need, to be seen for something going wrong. But that actually isn't what's providing my wellness. That's not actually making me healthy. That's not. So I do think when people had more barriers to access, they started realizing like, I still feel good, or I don't. So then they started looking at more holistic things they can do from home to support their health, as opposed to thinking that it's conventional medicine that makes them well. I think it's conventional medicine that helps manage and improve disease, but I don't think that's what's making you well.
It can be a little intimidating too, because a lot of functional doctors don't take insurance.
No, it should all be free. Yeah, it's hideous. Like, and access to mental health care and that kind of thing. It's just so much barriers and so much ridiculous with the insurance companies. And you're right. And then a lot of physicians are like, well, then you can only see me if you can afford it. And that's thousands of dollars just to get a lab study. So it has just become obsene.
Speaking of, you have a lot of free resources, right, on your website? Yep.
Yes.
Can you tell us what people can find?
Well, I think the most important thing that I provide is a continuous updated list of medical studies if you want to read it for yourself. So if you have, I have this particular issue, and then you can read a study that is looking at that. So that's super helpful. But I also have like a free ebook that'll, if you don't know what it is and you just want to start small, it's just 10 minutes a day for 10 days. You will notice a difference in 10 minutes a day just for 10 days. And so it's a guide how to do that. And, free blog posts and articles and videos and all that kind of stuff.
I told Emily, I was like, you should totally do something on grounding. It's a really cool topic. I would speculate that a lot of people who are doing this are the same people who are probably cutting out seed oils, have a diet that's probably super healthy to reduce inflammation. Is there anything to suggest diet and grounding? There's a correlation between the two. And are there enough studies that say these aren't just observational studies looking at somebody, but that specifically a person who prior was eating, if they're drinking Coca-Cola, maybe here and there, they're eating a typical American diet and grounding is still having the same effects on them? Or is it going to be somebody who's, look, they eat healthy, they exercise. So how do we know that's sort of not the case? Right?
There is a definite huge overlap between grounding and our digestion because our entire digestion is innervated by the vagus nerve, which we do know grounding boosts. So everything from swallowing to peristalsis in your gut to release of bile acids, it's all because of the vagus nerve. So we do know that grounding puts you into rest and digest and does optimize your entire digestive tract. However, we don't have studies showing like if people have cleaned up their diet, what does grounding do? And people have bad diets, what does grounding do? All the studies are the bad diets. All the studies are people that this is not even looked at or controlled for. It's just normal, regular people if they're grounded or ungrounded. But so anecdotally, I can definitely say there's additional benefits because the people who come to me are the holistic ones who've been meditating for 10 years and get really good sleep, eat pure vegan raw juice, and still something's missing. Why do I still have pain? Why can't I still do XYZ? Why do I still have this metabolic disorder? So there is something missing that does resolve when you add grounding, but that's just anecdotally. There are not studies on it.
Has there been an increase in autoimmune disorders?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that has to do with like this lack of grounding as well?
I don't 100% know about that interplay, but there's a lot, like he mentioned about the gut. So it has a lot to do with our diet, and our gut is inflamed. And so we don't have a nice barrier anymore. So things that we eat that are crap that aren't supposed to be in our body start getting into our body and in our system. And so our whole body becomes inflamed and on kind of alert. So because of that, it becomes hyper alert and it starts attacking itself. So if you have a bad diet and lots of gut inflammation, over time, you are more likely to get thyroid issues because you start making thyroid antibodies and attacking your own thyroid and you become hypothyroid. So like, for example, that's steeply on the rise. And when people clean up their diet, and I would say also get grounded, they can come off medication and they aren't even hypothyroid anymore. So yeah, there's a huge correlation.
But you said you're not in this to make money. So yeah. But you're so passionate about it. You put all of your energy into this. So yes. What does motivate you if it's not financially?
Well, because it's not out there. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, it's personal experience. I, especially starting with my daughter, Clara, because I was personally offended that it was just medicate her and get her to shut up or just leave her in a room and let her cry. And I don't know. It was a personal offense from then on. But I feel like I mentioned that because my appendix ruptured a few years ago. I would be dead for not conventional medicine so it's not one or the other. That's what I think that's why I am passionate about it because there isn't a lot of people in the middle. So it's not one or the other. It's conventional medicine to help me and support me when I have an issue going on. But that does not create wellness. It just does not create wellness. So we do have to have, just like you wouldn't say, well, I saw my doctor, so I don't need to drink water or wear my seatbelt. You wouldn't say that. So it's like, just because I'm getting medical support doesn't mean I don't want to get grounded.
Well, this is so easy too. Anybody can do it. Literally in a city, you can do this.
In a city, yeah. You could be in prison and when you go out in the little yard on the cement, you can touch the ground there. Yes, it's all the middle chain fence is grounded.
So
whatever.
For all of our prisoner listeners,
yeah.
Right? I thought the concrete did not allow grounding, so that I've learned something.
Where you might be thinking that is, I would not recommend asphalt or something that's been sealed because that now would add a plastic to it to make it last longer. But if it's just concrete or cement, it's 100%.
So what about the sidewalk? So to clarify, so if I go outside my house and there's sidewalk, I live in Manhattan, and I could, there's little trees I could touch, but could I just, again, not recommended, but if I wanted to walk barefoot down the streets and sidewalks of Manhattan, am I grounded or no?
100%. You're grounded.
Okay.
Anything anybody should watch out for, though, if they're going to try this for the first time?
I honestly don't recommend doing it through your feet because of what we have done to our environment these days. I don't think it's super safe. And even if it looks safe, there's pesticides and all that stuff. So I almost always tell people just go out with your hands. I mean, literally, if you know the whole day has gone by and you have not touched the earth in any way, shape, or form, at least go outside to stand next to a tree and hold a leaf while you look up at the moon and take 3 deep breaths. Just go outside and look at the stars and realize you're on this planet spinning through space with everyone else. hold onto that leaf and take 3 breaths before you go up and go to bed. That will make a difference.
We poo-pooed a little bit on some of the products, but if someone says, look, I want to do some of this, I'm busy, or I live in a city, I'm on a limited budget, what's the one thing you would recommend? Is it the sheets? Is it the socks? Is it like what?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is I would not recommend most of the grounding tools out there because they're all plastic based and like the sheets are polyester. Well, that's going to sit in a landfill for 500 years. And I think it's the most hypocritical thing in the world to say, I want the earth to make me feel better, but I'm going to put a plastic vinyl recliner in a landfill for centuries after I'm gone. So you want to look for natural fibers and ethically produced products. But then once you get there, I think just a mat is probably the most versatile because you can put a mat on your bed and sleep on it. You can take it to work and sit on it. You can take it and use it as a picnic blanket outside. You can take it, roll it up and put it in your suitcase when you travel. So just, I think a grounding mat, but one that's made out of, all natural fibers is better than a plastic one.
Cool. And you could put if you have like cotton sheets, right? You can put it under your sheet. You don't need to be like directly on that.
Usually, but I always say direct contact just so you know for sure, because I would say I've tested, of all the sheets I've tested, 1/3 will let it through and 2/3 will wind up blocking it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you so much. This was very informative. I love your passion and what you're doing. This is super cool stuff. And I know we both learned a lot. Ryan, do you have anything else you want to ask?
No, I don't think so. Do you have any
No more
questions
personal
for
questions
us
you
at
wanna
all?
get
Yeah,
to?
just my own personal. I'll contact you later about my own grounding.
Perfect.
I try and do it every day, but I use my feet. Like I just go outside and stand in the yard. I find that easy.
That's great. That's awesome.
We'll work on that weather and grounding study for you. That we'll get some anecdotal evidence.
That'd be awesome. Mm-hmm. And I just want to mention at the end, like we talked about, this does not mean you don't seek conventional medical support at all. This is an and situation. I want to see my physician. I want to get dental care. I want to make sure that my body's good. I want to get advice, guidance, and emergency care and long-term care. But can I also ground? Absolutely. Add that on.
And it might be preventative. You might not have to see a doctor.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much to Dr. Laura Koniver for sharing her time and knowledge with us. As she mentioned, it's important to seek out medical care if you're having an issue, and we always support you talking to your doctor when trying any new treatment. It's also worth mentioning that there are some companies marketing indoor grounding tools that may or may not be tested and approved by medical doctors. As Laura mentions, the best way to try grounding yourself is to simply step outside and touch anything growing out of the ground. Off the Radar is a production of the National Weather Desk. Make sure you're following the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes published every Tuesday. If you know someone that's interested in grounding, please share this episode with them. We'd also love you to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let us know what you think of the show. You can also give me some ideas for future episodes. Special thanks to Ryan Berlin for his contribution and for joining me to host this episode. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie. Make it a great day.